Hello and welcome to the Archery Plus show live ahead of the second stage of the Hyundai Archery World Cup here in Shanghai. I'm Karim Bashir, and joining me as he is going to for the whole of this season, it's Dutch Olympic archer Chef van den Berg. Chef, hi.
Hi, Karim.
In today's show, we are going to be looking at Korea, who return to the world stage here in Shanghai. We're also going to be taking a look at the conditions here. It's been pretty windy and rainy, but more on that a little bit later. We go behind the scenes to talk to the director of shooting about what it takes to run a competition on the international stage. And then we'll be talking to Chef about one of the archers he's picked, and we're going to be looking at their shot anatomy before we turn our attention to having a look at what the world's top seeds are doing right now. And then, of course, we finish off with the final four. But first up, we're back in Shanghai for the first time since the end of the global pandemic, and we're right back in the heart of the city. So we are back in Shanghai, the Wei Riverside Promenade here in Shanghai. You've shot here a few times. What's it like in Shanghai in general, and what's it like to shoot in this location?
Shanghai is a very nice place typically to shoot an archery competition. The weather can be a bit unpredictable, as we've mentioned before, but typically it's humid and warm, so for somebody like me it's difficult to endure. But the city is really nice to shoot in, and yeah, it's a good stadium to be in.
Yeah, well, look, we have a look at the pictures here of the venue, and well, that flag showing you how windy it is. But right by the television tower, right here in Shanghai, on the world famous Bund. It's a fantastic location. A lot of footfall from the locals, but also it's a beautiful location to shoot in, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right below the high rises, so you can have a nice view of the city, if you will. And it's just a nice place next to the river. You can see the boats coming by. It's always good. There is typically a lot of wind though. Yeah,
but a lot of local support as well. There's a lot of people that are interested in archery in this part of the world.
Yeah, the finals venue in Shanghai, China will always be filled with people, even if there's no Chinese people in the finals, but especially if there's Chinese people in the finals, they get really excited.
And a little birdie told me you quite like it in Shanghai too. Didn't you have your first success was led on to a fantastic season?
Pretty much, yeah. In 2016, I managed to grab the stage win in Shanghai. That was the first World Cup stage of that season, and it led to eventually me getting the fourth place in Rio, and also the second place at the World Cup final. In this particular instance in Shanghai, there were no Koreans. So the whole season I had the idea of could I have done it if there were Koreans, because obviously they were better archers than I ever was. But then later on in that season I managed to beat all the three Koreans on the Olympic team. So at the Olympics I beat Lee Seung-yeon, and then at the World Cup final I beat Koo Byung-chun and Kim Woo-jin. So for me that was really a breakthrough year, if you will.
A very good year indeed. Happy to be back here in Shanghai is Chef van den Berg, but so is everyone else. We're really looking forward to being back on the Bund. So an interesting time here with the Koreans returning to action after missing the first stage in Antalya because they were just finishing their domestic trials. They're back in full force here in Shanghai, and of course they're right back at the top again.
Yeah, arguably the Korean selection trials are as difficult, if not more difficult, than a World Cup circuit.
On that note, look, if they brought their C team, their D team, are you still expecting them to challenge on the stage?
I think so, yeah. I remember, I think it was 2015 or 2014 when they, or maybe 2017 even, when they brought their B team, and it was a youth team, I think, and I think they still won. I mean, what can you do? They're just very good, and they have a very broad selection of archers.
Well, if you look at the recurve Final Four, which we are going to talk about in a bit more depth a little bit later on, all four Koreans.
Yeah, for the ladies, that is.
Yeah, for the women. It's an incredible standard that they're setting.
Yeah, it's truly unmatched so far, and I want to say we are getting closer. We, as in the rest of the world, but they're not sitting still either. So the Korean team is also still getting better.
Yeah, and that's on the recurve side. But some changes have happened on the compound side, particularly in the coaching lineup.
Yeah, I think with the potential of compound at the Olympics, Korea has decided to invest in foreign coaching for the first time ever, and they have recruited Real Wild for this occasion.
It's a bold move, like you say, the first non-Korean coach in Korea.
Yeah.
But he comes with a certain amount of expertise that perhaps they don't have.
Yeah, not only in technique, but also equipment-wise. He knows a lot about tuning, about how when you pick a certain bow over the other. So he has a lot of knowledge there that he brought over to Korea and gave them maybe that little edge that they needed. Because I think technique, compound can be similar enough to recurve that they can figure that out. Equipment is just a whole different story.
Yeah, and you mentioned we could talk about this over the course of the weekend, but the tuning of the bow seems to be the key thing that he's brought. But not only has he brought that expertise to Korea, he's also got quite a lot of success here in Shanghai.
My name is Real Wild, and I just shot the new world record of 150 with 12 X's. The previous world record was 150 with 10 X's, which had tied with the women and the juniors and the cadets. It had stood for, I think we were thinking 4 years is how long that record had been around, so it's pretty good to break it because I had already held the 10. Shots are breaking good. My setup shoots a lot of X's. I mean, during qualification I shot 41. So it shoots a lot in the middle. Tried a new release actually. We put together a new one with True Ball. It's called the HBX, and it seems to be working really good. And then Sebastian got me, I shot a good score at 148. Sebastian shot a better score at 149. The French have got me a couple times this year. PJ got me in Arizona at 150 to 149. So I'd say, I guess sooner or later it'll be my turn, but good start to the year. Gives me good points towards the finals, and just kind of some good scores were shot, so I can't be displeased with how things went.
Conditions, well, they have been tricky here in Shanghai. If it's not windy, it's raining. And if it's not raining, it's windy, and sometimes it's both, and it's been coming down sideways here in Shanghai. Chef, you've done a little bit of behind the scenes and talked to a few people here about what it's like. I mean, one thing saying it's wet, but look at these conditions here.
Yeah, it's not just wet, it's absolutely soaking wet, literally, because I've talked to some people, and I've been told that not only the archers, but also the staff was typically wet, including their underwear and their socks. You can wear waterproof shoes, but they only go so far.
That's some diligent research you're doing there, Vandenberg. But what are we looking at here is a man who's soaking up the rain, excuse the pun.
Yeah, so Marcus de Almeida, and I quote, tried to feel the water on his body. So he tried to really live in the moment and experience everything going on. And rather than blocking it out, he took it all in.
But look, I just want to labour that point. Tell us those little details. When the rain is pouring down, you're soaked through to the bone. What does it affect?
Well, first off, your mental state. If you're in a certain, down state, you can get a bit sad or a bit annoyed by the fact that you're in the rain and that you're getting cold and you're getting wet fingers and wet equipment. But you can also go about do your job and just go about it as if nothing is happening. What Marcus is doing is he's really just focusing on, okay, I'm getting wet, what do I need to do to still stay on task? And Because the thing is, if your finger tab gets wet, the leather kind of swells up, it will feel different, your grip will be more slippery, your anchor point will be different because of the rain, it will feel different. So everything just feels different. But objectively speaking, it should stay very similar to what you're normally doing. The movement stays the same. And if you're able to keep your movement the same, then your scores will be very similar.
I know you don't like the direct questions, but I'm going to give you one here, and it's a yes or no. Does the pouring rain, the conditions in these conditions here in Shanghai in particular, where it is absolutely teeming it down, are they a leveler?
No.
There you go. More on that in the live coverage, I'm sure. The conditions are pretty tricky out here. But rain or shine, every competition needs decent officials. And our roving reporter, Lucy O'Sullivan, had a chance to chat to the director of shooting here in Shanghai.
We're behind the scenes today, and I've just found the director of shooting, David Tan. Hi, David.
Hey, hi.
I want you to show me what you're doing in this amazing structure.
Okay.
Can you show me how to do the timing system?
Yeah, sure. The system is actually to show the archers like how many seconds do they have for the match.
Do you want to show me how it starts?
Yeah, sure. So just press on the start and end.
Oh.
Yeah. And then it starts counting down. Again,
Oh yeah, so it's exactly the same.
4, 3, it should be 2, 1. So right now actually we are starting the timing for the team matches, which is counting down from 120 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if everyone was finished.
And then I will just press on finish end.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the 3 beeps will be coming out.
Okay. And then when that's finished, how does it go to the next match?
Okay. Before going to the next one, I will have to press this load.
Okay.
And then over here, it will tells me that we will be starting for the second round of this match.
Okay.
And once the field is clear, the archers are ready, the
So
judge...
this is why you need the windows?
Yes. Because you never know whether there will be someone at the back or something. Yeah.
So you check everything.
Yeah.
And then
I will press start. Yeah,
Okay.
that's the start.
so much power at your fingertips.
Yeah, so 2 beeps will be like telling the archers to get ready, or perhaps to move up to the shooting line, especially during for the individual rounds, individual matches. 1 beep is for them to start shooting, and then 3 beeps is actually to stop.
Can I have a go?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, you hold this.
Okay.
Okay. So finish.
Yes.
Okay. We check.
Yeah.
Everything's clear.
Yeah.
We load the end.
Yes.
Okay. And then check again.
Yes.
All good. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
In the nicest possible way, it's time for a nerd alert. Because now we're going behind the scenes and taking a look at the technique of one athlete in particular with Chef Van den Berg. Chef, who have you chosen for this episode's shot anatomy?
Today we are going to have a look at Miguel Alvarinho Garcia. He has a lovely shot that has proven itself over the last couple of years.
We get a good look at it here, Chef.
Yeah, he really knows how to get into back tension, which is like this coveted thing in recurve archery. You can see it best when he's pulling back his bow, but what he can do really nicely is when he pulls back his bow, his left hand, right hand, and elbow are all in line with each other and in line with the arrow. And then as soon as he gets into anchor, you can see that all the movement is coming from the back rather than from the arm and the shoulder. So yeah, just a really strong shot and really enjoyable to look at.
You talked about these 3 elements of the shot. Does anyone else on the circuit have anything similar that we can see?
Well, his shot is mostly based on the NTS system, I think, the Kisek Lee kind of style of shooting. It kind of came over to Spain when his coach went to the US to train with Giuseppe. He just has a very nice iteration of it, and yeah, it works really well for him. But other people like Brady Ellison also have a very similar style of the angular draw that Miguel is showing.
Yeah, it's a lovely shot. In terms of the amount of time it takes, though, is that a factor for Alvarinho?
I think not necessarily. He knows how to have good shot timing and how to deal with a longer shot or when it goes a bit quicker. It does, because he has a little bit of a pause before he goes into anchor. Yeah. That does take a little bit of time, to get to anchor properly. If you look at, for instance, Kibo Bay, when she still actively shot international competitions, there's a load of video footage there where she just like immediately comes into anchor, where Alvarinho has a bit of a moment and then has to find his anchor. So it's a bit slower, but I wouldn't say it's too slow.
No, and it's when we talk about this all the time, don't we? It's what works for you, and it really has worked for Alvarinho, especially since we've come back out of the pandemic.
Yeah. There is no set best timing for a shot. It's very personal, and I think everything in archery is very personal. And like you said, we've seen over the last, I would say, 3 years, that Miguel has really found something that works for him.
Well, there you go. Told you it was a proper geek out. That's Chef's Shot Anatomy. So we've seen all of the top seeds appearing here, especially with the Koreans back in Shanghai, but we're not seeing the kind of consistency that we have seen over the last few years. If you take the likes of Mike Schlosser, for example, we used to regularly seeing at the business end of tournaments, and then of course Ella Gibson as well, who shot to fame last season. She only went to 3 of the World Cup stages, but she won all 3 of them. But neither of them have won so far. I know we're only on the 2nd stage, but they haven't won so far, and they're perhaps showing they are fallible.
Yeah, you can see that there's a bit of a kink in their armor sometimes, but the first stage, I have to say, was a very high level of shooting in the top 4s.
It certainly was.
And then also Ella and Mike did make it to the top 4, both here and at the first stage. So to say that they're not dominant is, I feel like, a bit of a stretch, because they managed to, as the only 2 archers, make it into the top 4 twice. And that's a feat in itself.
What does it take to maintain that level, though? How do you start? I think Gibson here winning 3 stages, the only 3 stages she went to last season. How do you get to the level and stay at the level, I suppose, is more important?
Yeah, I think staying at a level where you just win everything that you attend is virtually impossible. But I would say what is key is take a break every once in a while.
Yeah.
So as soon as you feel burnt up or burnt out with your shooting, and you don't feel like it, you feel like you need a break, take a break. And that's not saying I don't feel like shooting today, I won't go, but more like if you're in a long stretch of training and then you feel like, oh, my shoulder's starting to hurt.
It's a purposeful break. You're doing it deliberately to improve your archery rather than just having had enough of it.
Exactly, yeah. Because there's a difference. I've heard people have the argument of whenever I take a break, I feel like I'm falling behind on training, yes. So I'm not putting any time into getting better. But purposely taking a break is also getting better. As long as you can be honest to yourself and say, I need this break right now, rather than I feel like having a break, because that's a bit of a different, it's a nuance.
Yeah, sometimes you come back with fresh eyes as well and you just feel a bit fresher, and of course the physical recuperation. Are they clinging on? It feels like a bit of a harsh way of saying they're clinging on to number 1 spots.
Maybe. On the other hand, they're the only 2 really high-ranked archers in the top 4 right now, so they're the only 2 getting points for the World Cup ranking. But I kind of see where your comment is coming from, because we've seen some struggles in their top 4 matches in the first stage. I mean, we've seen struggles with Mikey's top 4s before, and it's something that he's actively working on, I suppose. But But for Ella, we don't know what to expect because she's only been at the top of her game for so long. So it's very difficult to predict.
1 year, and yet she's the standout name in the top 4 here.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, are those top seeds clinging on? It's one that we will keep an eye on for the rest of the season. So now we've got to the final section, and that is looking at the final fours here in Shanghai. We're going to start with the compound women's competition. Chef, I know you love this part of the show, especially because you love to do your predictions. The women's final four in the compound competition we'll start with first. So we've got Kaur from India up against Gibson from Great Britain. Here they are on your screen. And it's Cho from Korea. In a compound women's final up against a Turkish athlete, Tomruk, who's perhaps a bit of a new name to some people. Tell us about this final four.
Yeah, it's difficult to predict this one because there's a couple names that we haven't seen that much of. Obviously Kaur, we've seen before, but not really a lot, just a couple instances. And then we have Ella Gibson, who we've seen all the time in the last 15 months or so. Then we have Cho and Tomruk, who, like, it's very difficult to say what we can expect from them. So if I were...
First off, I mean, Korea and Turkey, two very strong archery nations. It's a popular sport in both countries.
Yeah, so it's not a surprise that they're in the top four.
Yeah.
But it will be a surprise what we will see of them in the top four.
Save your prediction. Let's talk about the men. We have another Indian in the men's lineup. That's Jalka, and he goes up against Yatma, the Estonian. Yang from Korea, another Korean in the compound final, going up against your countryman, Mr. Perfect.
Yeah. So again, we have two not so experienced archers and two a little more experienced archers in Yatma and Slusser. Yatma has done a couple podiums in his junior career, but also I think third place at the World Championships. So he knows how to shoot an arrow. Slusser needs no introduction anymore. I feel like we talk about him every archery show and every...
well, it's hard not to because he features in every
exactly.
competition at the business end.
But then Yang and Jalkar, very difficult to say again.
We can't predict too much with them, can we?
It's a bit of a wild card in both of them.
But again, we go back to this story that we've talked about through the season, that the Indians have put a lot more investment into archery, thinking about the next Olympic cycle, not just for Paris, but also thereafter. And of course, the Koreans with their new American coach.
Yeah, and the same goes for India, obviously, with their Italian coach. So both recruiting a foreign coach to elevate them to the next level, and
seems to be working.
It seems to be working because we see a Korean compound archer in the top four, which we've seen before with, for instance, Kim Jong-ho.
Yeah.
But also looking at India's results in Antalya, that was hugely impressive.
Definitely. Yeah.
So
climbing the performance hill at the moment.
Yeah.
Prediction time, I'm afraid. Let's start with the women. Who are you going for?
As how do you say that? Predictable as it is, I'm going to go for Ella Gibson, just because we've seen how high she can score in a finals venue and how comfortable she feels doing it.
Yes.
And I think she has a point to prove after Antalya getting fourth. Not a bad result by any means, but I think she's gotten used to medaling and she wants to get back on the top of the podium.
Men?
Tough
one, isn't it?
Is a very tough one, yeah, because I think purely on raw score, you would go for Mikey.
Yeah.
But then we know that Mike has issues in the top four setting. He is working on them, I can only assume.
Yeah.
And I would love to see him just bang out perfect scores again, like he used to do. But then I don't know if as soon as it is now after Antalya, where we saw him have a couple of bad shots, I don't know if this is the right time yet. So I am going to go for the Korean surprise.
Interesting. That definitely interesting to see what happens here.
Yep.
It was great in Antalya, the compound. We talked about it regularly, and we here it looks the same. And Yang from Korea is your pick in the men.
Yep.
Okay, well that's compound done. 2 more to go, I'm afraid. But your discipline, the Olympic style of archery, recurve. We start with the women as we did with the compound. Korea versus Korea in the first semi-final, and Korea versus Korea in the second semi-final. Look, let's just keep this nice and simple. They're very good.
Yeah.
We've got someone new though, so what can we see? Is this going to be an emerging athlete? Is she going to break through against her Korean teammates? And of course, I'm talking about Lim here.
Yeah. So I'm going out on a limb here.
Oh, really? Did you go there? That's great.
But she was my prediction at the beginning of the year for this season.
You're quite right, yeah.
And I think I'm sticking with it. I think she is going to show the more experienced archers of Korea that you don't have to be over 20 to
be on the top of the podium.
Be on the top of the podium.
And it's an interesting one actually, because I was looking at the stats. Kang, An, and Choi at some point have all won the Hyundai Archery World Cup final.
Yeah.
They've won the gold at the end of the season, and yet you're still picking the other one.
Yeah, because I like to have an underdog story, and as much as you can talk about an underdog story for a Korean archer, in this particular case, I'm going for Lim. Yeah.
Got out on a limb. Very good. One last question about Korea, and specifically the Olympic Games. Paris 2024 is just around the corner. Qualification has already begun.
Yeah.
No one's ever beaten the Korean women's team.
No.
There's 4 in the final here. They were kind of in a way a bit lucky. 3 of them were seeded 1, 2, and 3 after the ranking round, so they were always going to not meet until at least the earliest, the semi-finals. Lim actually came through as a 10th seed, just ended up in a quarter that didn't feature any of the other Koreans. So that's how they've ended up with 4 through to this stage. But what about everybody else? Is everyone genuinely just going for silver medal here at the Olympic Games in the team competition?
I feel like it's a bit of a stretch, but I mean, historically speaking, yes. But like I said before, I think the rest of the world is slowly catching up. On the other hand, we're seeing 4 Korean ladies in the top 4 of the first
time
World
back
Cup.
in the season as well.
So I think most countries would be very happy to get the silver medal at the Olympics, but obviously they'll be gunning for gold. Yeah.
So you pick Lim for the women. What about the men? The men's lineup has your countrymen, so you've got a bit of interest in both the men's finals. Violet against O of Korea, Lee of China against Dalmeida of Brazil, who seem to be enjoying the conditions.
Yeah, I think his semi-final was even 6-0 win with 29, 29, 29. He's just been scoring very well.
Standard's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, despite the circumstances, because it's not been easy by any stretch. So Marcus is very much a contender.
Lee's a bit of an unknown though, isn't he?
Lee's a bit of an unknown, but he has the home court advantage, as much as you could speak about that in archery. I think we've seen Chinese archers shoot really well in Shanghai and then getting all of the support from the audience, which is a very powerful thing. Then we've got Steve versus Oh Jin Hyuk. Interesting, because we're having Steve won over Mette Gazols, the reigning Olympic champion.
First, and then?
Yeah, and then he beat Brady, the top seed.
He didn't have an easy road, did he?
No, so by any means. But then now he would have to beat another Olympic champion, and also an Olympic champion with I don't know how many years of experience and a very high level this week. So it's a tough call.
You've got to pick one though.
Yeah. As much as I'd like to say Steve, because he's my countryman, I am probably the biggest fan of Oh Jin Hyuk.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see him on top of the podium.
Got a poster on your bedroom wall?
If I could find one, I'd hang it up.
I'm sure someone out there can find one for you. Yeah.
Let me know.
Well, brilliant. Thanks for your predictions. Well, that's it from this edition of the Archery Plus show. But of course, we've got 2 days of live coverage coming from you right here in Shanghai. Go to the World Archery website, a news post on the 13th of this month. Tells you exactly where you can watch the live action from wherever you are watching it. We are here in Shanghai starting at 10 a.m. local time for our first session and 2 p.m. local time for our second session. That's it from us for today, but join us tomorrow for Compound Saturday.